Welcome to Season 2 of ADAC Answers, an education podcast for all. Produced by the Podcast Business News Network, hosted by Jill Nicolini. ADAC's mission is to empower K-12 school leaders and teachers to meet the individual learning needs of all students through customized, professional development and coaching services. Led and staffed by passionate, committed professionals, ADAC prides itself on delivering precise solutions to its clients' unique education challenges. ADAC stands for Attain, Differentiate, Advance, and Collaborate. 4 words we believe epitomize our work. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are so excited to have the team from ADAC here joining us. And you may say, what's ADAC? It's empowering educators and, of course, all those from K through 12 learning and helping all students, all the needs of all students, which do matter. So we're here back with Tom Olson, Mary Marotta today to talk more about artificial intelligence. But before we get into that, let's get a little overview from yourself, Tom, to start about what ADAC is and, of course, what you do.
Yes, thank you, Jill, for having us back. And ADAC has very much appreciated the opportunity to be part of this 11 podcast episode
series. Yes.
So it's wonderful for us to be able to come on your show and talk about all that ADAC does and all the various challenges and opportunities that our clients are meeting in the great field that is K-12 education. But as you've already intimated for the listeners, Jill, just to give a quick summation, ADAC works with both public and private schools to empower K-12 educators to meet the learning needs of all students. And we really emphasize the word all there. We work with teachers and we work with school leaders in a variety of fashions, but one of our sweet spots, among others, is helping both public and private schools to develop the infrastructures and the capacities and the means that they need to be able to teach students with learning differences well. So that is really one of the thrusts of our mission, but by no means the only part of our mission as conveyed throughout this series. And so it's a pleasure and a privilege, Jill, for me to be back on with you and to have with you this time one of our team members, Mary Marotta, who I will obviously have you introduce next.
Great. Mary, tell us a little about what you do with ADAC, please.
Great. I'm working with ADAC as a consultant and focusing on technology integration and the most recent topic, artificial intelligence in education and how that connects with the classroom, teaching and learning.
Amazing. Thanks for being here. And Tom, if you don't mind sharing your title, I know I got to meet you as well as your partner last time. Just tell us a little about your background.
Yes, happy to. So I'm one of the founders of ADAC. I'm the Chief Executive Officer, the CEO of ADAC, along with one of the co-founders. I founded ADAC back in 2018 with my business partner, Steve Perla, who's the president, who I know you've interviewed and who will continue to be interviewed in part of some of these programs. My background in the field of education came more from the philanthropy management side of things, helping private schools that is, to secure for themselves the private resources, philanthropic and otherwise, that they need to function well. And through that work, I got to know education, got to know the K-12 space, and became eventually, after founding ADAC CEO. So very happy to be with you once again today, Jill.
Thanks so much. And Mary, thank you so much for being here. Let's talk a little about AI and just for newcomers, what exactly it is. And we'll get to know what inspired you as an early adopter of artificial intelligence, please, especially in the K through 12 fields. Thank you.
Sure. So my background has been an instructional technology coach in K-12 for approximately 25 years. So that means I have the privilege to work with teachers in the classroom. And it's been through a variety of different technology tools. So if we back things up a few years ago, maybe it was iPad, maybe it was Chromebooks. But it's always been some form or level of technology integration in the classroom and how that might improve teaching practices. But while being in the K-12 classroom, I've always had a side job. I've always done consulting outside of the school or at higher ed. My previous work before I came into public education is I worked in the corporate environment. So I feel like I have this mix of technology skills tied with I have a degree in instructional technology as well.
Wow, and here we are talking about AI, and I know you just mentioned the Chromebook and the iPads. My kids are 7 and 9, and the niece and nephews were maybe 16, 14. I'm still fascinated with the smartboard. I still remember the chalkboard with chalk. And when I went there for a school night a few months ago, the open school night, I said, how does this work? Was that something as well you were helping people adapt to in the classroom?
A- Absolutely. Believe it or not, I became a a Smartboard certified trainer.
Oh,
So
wow.
I went through training for the Smartboard and how to use it because, again, people invest all that money into technology. And unless you know the pedagogy behind it, the software to use, it's a big projection board. So it may not be a smartboard now. We've moved into a lot of interactive panels, but a
Wow.
lot of that, teachers have this equipment dropped in the classroom and good luck. And without professional development, they just become really heavy paperweights. So
Got it.
I think it's really important that professional development is tied to what teachers are doing in the classroom.
Amazing. So let's get to AI. It's all over the news, artificial intelligence the past few months. When were you first introduced to it? And could you tell our listeners a little bit about it? And then we'll get to how AI is now being adapted into the classroom
Sure.
and what that entails.
So I think it was in a staff meeting, maybe in about December 2022, January 23. Someone mentioned the word chat GPT. And I can remember thinking, I've got a good pulse on technology. I have no idea what that is. And I came into my office and I wrote it on the board and I texted a few people that I work with, and they're like, I have no idea what it is. Literally 6 weeks later, it was everywhere.
Mm,
My style of learning something is maybe jumping in, taking a look at what it is. But I had been working with a few tools. So, for instance, Canva for education, it had built some of that artificial intelligence into the program anyway. So
okay.
I could look at what that tool was, then look at ChatGPT. And now it's exploded. It's everywhere. And I think that was the February timeframe. I was approached to put together a workshop about introducing teachers to ChatGPT and AI. And in the spring of 2023, we put together like a 15 credit class. What is it? And we had a
Uh,
lot of teachers sign up. So you have your early adopters. What is it? I want to know about it. So we've delivered that a few times.
Amazing. And could you share the difference or distinction, I should say, between AI and generative AI? I've heard both terms and I'm not really familiar myself.
Absolutely. So I think we've always had, I shouldn't say always, we've had artificial intelligence. I try to think of it of things in my household, for instance, whether it's like Alexa or Siri or Google Home or Nest thermometers. And basically, it takes those human like intelligent tasks and it's automating them. So we've had artificial intelligence and tools and applications for a number of years, but I think the new subset of that, or the new buzzword now, is generative AI. And that's more like the chat GPT and all the tools that we're seeing come out, that it's more about creation tools and it's more about what you put into the program, and it's creating information based on language models. So one is one you create with, and other
Okay.
one is like how you use it.
Okay. What are some of the promises of AI in K through 12 education?
So I guess it depends who you ask. I think if we had a panel here of 12 people, you might get 12 different answers. I'm going to give you what I have seen in the classroom with it. I think AI does have the potential to personalize learning for students. It can also enhance teacher efficiency and what teachers are doing, not only with just administrative tasks, but the ability to create rubrics, lesson plans, automate some of that work that could take teachers hours to do.
Hmm.
You could do it in a shorter period of time. Is it 100% correct and perfect? Absolutely not. So I would say that when I've used many of these tools, I've gotten about a 75, 25% range. So I'm about 75% happy with what it has. The more I use it and the better prompts I know what to give it, I feel like that's gone up to a little bit more of an 80% range. But it has lots of opportunities to take lesson plans that may exist and differentiate that instruction. It could be on reading levels, translation of tools. It's worked well where I've had to adapt instruction in a classroom based on the students that are in the class. So I might have students that are on an IEP or a 504 or EL students that I now have the ability in some of these programs to quickly adapt to meet those needs.
Thank you. And Tom, just curious from your background, when did you learn about AI? And then obviously now including it and making it all inclusive with your company. Oh, I think you're on mute. There you
Thank
go.
you, Jill. AI, I'm well trained, right? So AI for all of us has been one of those realities that has come on the scene quite quickly. And one thing that I'm aware of is how much for everything that we know about AI, there is so much that we don't know. And the reason for that is because of AI is constantly evolving.
Yes,
And
and
what is
quickly.
exactly what's new today is going to be old news tomorrow. And so I mentioned that because to answer your question directly, how did I become first aware of it? Unless you've been living under a rock, you have to have become aware of it in this last even 6 months or so.
Yeah.
The media has done a much better job, I think, at talking about it. I know one major network, CNN, they did some really interesting things a few months ago where they were mimicking CNN broadcasters in terms of the voices and
Amazing, right?
the
Yes.
birds. And it's both scary, but also it's here. And the fact that it's here means that we have to address it. But to answer your question, Jill, I only became aware of it and its ubiquity and its importance as well. And the importance part is really what Mary can speak to, but I only became aware of it myself over the last 6 or so months.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. And let's talk a little bit about some of the perils of AI and all that as well, Mary.
So I think when you're in a K-12 school and working within a district and you're introducing any kind of technology, that it can be overwhelming for a number of reasons. So I think the number one topic that people in education are talking about right now is privacy and data security. Like when you sign up for these tools and
Mm-hmm.
applications, what data is that collecting? How is that data being shared? So, although there's a lot of tools, and whether it's tools that are used in schools or tools that kids use outside of school, it's
Got it.
really important to know that what is that company, what is the data being collected on. So, that's one of the perils. The easier that we can make accessing that information and almost like that information, the better. And what I've seen in many school districts is really not just teachers figuring this out, but a committee. So, school committees, CEOs, principals, superintendents coming together in a panel and a discussion to talk about the promises and perils and also learn alongside of the teachers. So, again, we have some teachers that are early adopters, they're very curious. We have other teachers that I want to stay with pen and paper. So they're
Yeah.
reluctant to make those changes. So it's really tricky. And Tom said earlier, it's evolving. I
Yeah.
recently taught a class and I had 20 people in the class. And I said to the group of teachers, how many of you have used AI? And only 3 hands went up. So it's still really new. I think a lot of people are
Mhm.
sitting on the sidelines and observing. And ADAC put together a great webinar we did last, I think it was October, Tom, that we did it. We rolled it out in 3 different sessions. And we talked about AI, generative AI, ChatGPT, and how it may impact education. And I think we had over 400
Wow.
participants in each session. So teachers are curious. Um, I think one of the other things that are the perils around this, I think we have some educators that might be looking at this and saying, is it taking away the critical thinking and the
Ah,
creativity for students?
yeah.
And then you'll have teachers that have used it that are on the other side of the conversation that they see it enhancing that.
Got it. Yeah, it's got to be hard to bring in new changes, especially to the older teachers out there like myself, if I was an older teacher, right? The youngins coming in at 20 something, and this may be, easy for them to do. But yeah, especially it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, they say, but it's part of the curriculum and it's not easy. There's my father who doesn't even know how to use a cell phone. And when I told him recently about what AI was, because there was a newspaper article and he was just so confused, like, I don't understand. And then I went on the chat GPT and I said, Dad, look, I can actually search my name and make someone can show a picture of me as an astronaut. He's like, what? And it was just fascinating. And then I'm showing him how he could use this. And he's like, this is so cool. But he was really interested. And I'm sure a lot of people are, but it's a learning curve. It's a learning process. And anytime you learn something new, as I'm sure you all know, especially in the educational world, it could be scary. All right. Thanks
Absolutely.
for sharing that. Would you say there's some barriers in K through 12 schools though with AI as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that K-12 education, and again, we have to be very careful about student data privacy, how these tools are being used, and it varies at different grade levels. And I think there's a new release of the National Educational Technology Plan. So at the national level, it's starting to talk about what those barriers are. It's giving administration toolkits to roll this out, a way to interact with the community, because as we talk about barriers in education, Tom and I talked about this last week. I almost think we need to take a step back and a little bit what you said, Jill. It's not just what you're learning in school, it's what you're using outside in those conversations, like you just mentioned with your dad when you were
Yeah.
showing. I've had those are the aha moments for me. I know that I've had some family members, friends, colleagues. They've talked about, oh, I have to prepare a speech this week on XYZ, and they're talking and they're talking and I'm putting into Chat GPT a couple of writing prompts. And just to turn your phone around and say, what do you think of this? I think I've referred to it as it's jaw dropping. What? It's been very accurate, very concise on a lot of the key information. But again, it doesn't have that human intelligence. It doesn't know how to tell that story in that recognition speech that you would have. So that's where I talk about it might be 75, 80% on task, but it doesn't have that human like touch built
Yep.
into it. And that's where working with teachers to integrate that into it makes it feel a little bit more normal, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And also, I know part of the same question, I guess it's piggybacked here, is in regards to the lesson plan, right? Or I'm sorry,
Absolutely.
no, it's how K-12 schools, sorry, and educators can get around these barriers. And then that's the next question I was going to ask.
No, no worries. So I think educators, the best thing that we can do is work together as a team. So I may have one lens and how I think AI can work in the classroom, and maybe I have another teacher, and it doesn't really matter in terms of I have new teachers that are new to education, and maybe they've used a lot of technology, but as consumers, so they've never actually made lesson plans where they've integrated technology. And I have found even some of the teachers that I've worked with for a number of years, believe it or not, they're the teachers that are really curious. Oh, something new is coming. How can I adapt this into my lesson? And the best way we can do it, and I've seen it done with lots of schools, is to put a
Mhm.
committee together where you're all talking about the pros and the cons. Maybe you're working with other schools, you're
Yep.
working with those national educational technology plans. And just when you think you have it figured out, Jill, Tom says, it changes. It's changing the way I taught the class last spring. It's going to
Amazing.
be different subjects and different topics the way we're going to be teaching it coming up in May.
Wow. At this time, I would like to find out the best form of contact. Tom, could you share the website information and then also just tell us a little bit about the foundation as well? Because I know that's a whole nother part of it. Before we continue. Oh, unmute. Sorry. No, I get it. You're doing the respectful thing for Mary.
Yes, that's the second time I've done that, Chill.
It's
Yes,
okay.
our folks can reach out to us. Best means of reaching out to us is via our website. Our website is www.theadac.com. So that's THEADAC.com. And that website will lead folks to our website that's been designed for our work among private schools. But linked off of that website is also our public school website. And you can that website is linked to the private one. The URL for the public school website is www.theadacpublic, THEADAC public, PUBLIC.com. And so those are our two websites that, as I said, are linked together and convey all the work that we're doing, helping teachers to set up systems and receive the professional development and the other support that they need to teach as best they possibly can, and leaders to lead as best they possibly can. But you mentioned, Jill, and rightfully so, that we also have a foundation, and that foundation is called ADAC Advocacy Foundation.
Hmm.
And the purpose of the ADAC Advocacy Foundation, which functions as a 501c3, a nonprofit, is that we also work with private schools to help private school leaders, private school network leaders, for example, Catholic dioceses and archdioceses, various CAPE organizations throughout the country, to really ensure that private schools and private school students are fully receiving their full share and their equitable participation in federal education programs, two of which that we focus on primarily, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, as well as the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is the latest authorization of the 1965 ESEA, under which the title programs fall. And so that's the
Beautiful.
work on the advocacy side.
All right. Thanks so much for that. And back to AI, besides using that really just for educational tools, it can be used by students, right? That's helping them create and facilitate other formative outside of school learning experiences that really can help them personally and also in the classroom. Could you talk about maybe some of these experiences that students can experience with AI outside the classroom and how that can maybe infiltrate and benefit student learning overall?
So what's really interesting is when we were doing lessons with kids last spring and we were introducing just different lesson plans that integrated some different pieces of technology, I had kids say, "Oh, I have a chatbot. I have it on my phone. Would you like to see it, Mrs. Marotta? It's
Wow.
in Snapchat." So I didn't know that
I
in
didn't know that
Snapchat
either.
there's a chatbot. And it's so what's happening is it's appearing in the social media tools as well. So this is something that I think families and communities need to come together. It's not just a 8 to 3 in school subject matter, it's in different tools and applications kids are using outside of school. One of the things that we've tried to do at a high school that I worked at that I think it's really important is we've talked about like portrait of a graduate. What are those skills that students need going on to college or the workplace? And we've actually done field trips into different businesses. And we've had students interview people that were working in CAD, design, whatever field it was. And now we're looking at how AI is starting to work with engineering programs, how it's working. We have kids that do the morning news, they do a journalism segment. Like, how do you write that script? How do you check it on your facts? Is all that information correct? So the more we can do to connect with what's going on inside the school with real world and the bigger picture of AI in learning and really fostering that, creativity, curiosity for students, I think the better off we'll be. While at the same time being very cautious about barriers and giving information out. And we're learning as we go. I even think this week, Jill, we're talking about TikTok in the news right now, right? Are we
Yep.
going to ban that in the United States? And that's
Well,
another thing I think, Tom, when we had this discussion last time, we always try to bring in our webinars or in classes, what are the current trends? What's happening right now, this week, this month, that we can talk about that makes it interesting, not something that you wrote 6 months or a year ago. We try to make it real world.
and I got to talk to my niece and nephew about the Snapchat. I had no idea that AI could
Yes.
be a part of it too. And then the Beatles, right? Didn't they release a song recently produced by AI?
Yes, absolutely. We were teaching
Crazy.
the webinar where we had a number of participants in it. It was on the news that week, and it talked about with permission. This was driven. Paul McCartney was involved, that they were able to start of a song, generate the voices, and actually release a song without John Lennon. I thought that was really interesting. So we talk about like the good, the bad, the ugly. I thought that was really good that they could do that. But there's
Yeah.
also caution on the side of a week later, artists are having their voices recorded and
Recorded.
used without their permission.
And their faces and their bodies. And there's a
Absolutely.
whole nother level of wow, what's going to happen? All the laws and it's just this trickle down effect. It's amazing. But looking at the positive, which obviously is what you all bringing into the classroom, it's just fascinating. Could you talk about some of the students, maybe some of the opportunities that it can bring, and even with work realities of tomorrow?
So I think the more kids can relate, and sometimes the homework is go home and speak to a family member or speak to a neighbor or someone that you know how AI is being used where they work or in college.
Mhm.
So a little bit of that looking ahead. I can give some personal examples in talking with people in HR. Oh, I have to write the following. And it's just like organically lent itself to showing them how to use a chatbot. They weren't even aware that it
Yeah.
existed or how you can get some writing prompts. Some people might say, oh, is that cheating that you're getting that information someplace else? But I look at it in terms of It's a way to brainstorm. It's a way to get an outline, to get some ideas. It might capture some of your ideas and maybe a bigger lens of what's going on in the news and media as well.
Got it. Thank you for that. And maybe we could talk a little bit about what would you say is, or why is it so thoughtful that professional development and them utilizing AI is essential for educators, and maybe talk a little more about the support that K through 12 school leaders and teachers are getting and benefiting by. And then I apologize, we're out of time. We only have 2 minutes left, so I apologize to
No
make this
worries.
question a little concise. Thank you. This answer.
I think that's one of the most important topics, is really good professional development tied to what teachers are doing in the classroom. And I think ADAC was able to do that last spring by having the webinar. And teachers came back and said, we want more of this guided instruction and learning. And with that, we're coming up with a course in the month of May for educators. And I'll turn that back to Tom. He can talk a little bit about that as well.
Great.
Yes, the course will be designed precisely as Mary has just said, for educators to learn more about how to integrate AI into their teaching. The course will carry with it PDP point opportunities as well for educators, so they can utilize the taking of the course to help in their own professional development requirements. And I would just simply say to people to stay tuned to and with ADAC about that. Our publicity for that course is beginning as we speak, but it hasn't quite begun yet. And again, I'll just reiterate our website, www.theadac.com. Folks can check out information on that website about the course. But just stand by. We are in the process of soon to begin publicizing that course throughout the country. And we look forward to having as many folks join it as possible. I know that Mary and Craig have designed a wonderful course that will hopefully be not only a course that will give to folks sort of the broad picture, but also provide some real concrete tips that can be hopefully employed and utilized. Mary, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the very concrete things that will be offered by you and Craig in that course?
Yeah. Absolutely. So when we have our class, again, we start out with an introduction, but there's a whole suite of educational generative tools that have come out. And just even this week, forward-facing student chatbots. So we want to take all of that information and kind of synthesize that and give people not the 200 tools that are out there, but maybe 4 or 5 that you can start with. And again, back to that committee at your school, we hope to make you a more informed consumer about AI, what those tools are, how it can not only help teachers, but it can also help students.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And we appreciate all that we've talked about today, and would love to find out one more time how we can contact you. And thanks. This has been very interesting to those, I think, in the education world and those like myself who are not, but it's just fascinating that this is taking over the world. And there's amazing impacts. And of course, good. There's also bad with it. It's great that we're learning and all doing this together. Tom, remind us how we can contact you, please.
www.theadac.com. That's THEADAC.com.
Perfect. And Mary, thanks so much. You're at the same website as well, right? We can find you?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Pleasure meeting and talking with you.
You too. Thank you so much.
1 in 5 children in the United States have learning differences, making it more challenging than ever to be a teacher or school leader. At ADAC, we empower K-12 educators to meet the learning needs of all students through customized professional development and coaching services. Learn more at www.theadac.com. That's THEADAC.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode of ADAC Answers. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. To learn more about ADAC, please visit our website, www.theadac.com. That's theadac.com. You can also find us on Facebook and LinkedIn.